Today's video is on the effects of perpetual diets. So we're going to cover a few things in today's video. The first thing we are going to cover is the effects of dieting in general. We're going to cover some of the statistics behind dieting, and we are also going to cover the body's defense system against dieting and what that means for the dieter. We're also going to cover why perpetual dieting is harmful for your long-term fitness goals. And at the end, we're going to recap and talk about things that you might be able to do to prevent some of this stuff. So anyway, hope you enjoy the video. Let's get started. So the first thing I want to cover in today's video is just some general stats and effects of dieting. So one of the most common misconceptions about dieting is that long-term it is successful. So based on the numbers alone, meaning overall weight loss, lost and regained over time, diets actually have a 95% failure rating. Now what that means is, let's say an individual loses 20 pounds, odds are within a 5-year period they will have gained all of that weight back, if not more. Now there are some layers to this statistic. Weight is obviously comprised of a lot of things. It's not just body fat, it's also muscle tissue, it's also water, etc., etc., etc. So if you had an individual that lost 20 pounds of body fat and then regained 15 pounds of lean tissue and 5 pounds of body fat, they would show up on the statistic as having a failed attempt at dieting. So this is not necessarily the entire picture, but from a weight standpoint alone, the effects of dieting are pretty bleak, okay? Now, the one thing about dieting is that your body actually has systems in place to make every attempt at weight loss a little harder than the previous attempt. Now, we're going to get into what these things are a little bit later in the video, but the first thing that you should know is every time that you diet, it's going to be a little harder than the previous time unless you take steps in between diets to reverse some of the effects of dieting. Okay, now one of the effects of dieting is a slowed metabolic rate. So what that means is, let's say we have an individual that has a resting metabolism of 2,000 calories per day. If they put themselves on a calorie restriction plan and are eating 1,750 calories per day, eventually, over time, that individual will lose weight, but what will happen is the body will adapt to that new level of calories and their new resting metabolism will become 1,750 calories per day. So, over time, as you diet, the body slows your metabolism to keep you alive, because if it did not, eventually all your tissues would get eaten and you would die, and our bodies are very adaptive. So that is one of the things to take into account, is that every time that you diet, your metabolism is going to get a little slower. And if you're somebody that perpetually diets every time, one diet after the next, after the next, after the next, that is the reason why it gets harder, because your starting metabolism may have been a certain amount of calories, but over time that metabolism gets lower and lower and lower and lower, meaning that you have to keep reducing your calories more and more and more just to see weight loss, okay? Now, one thing that I should mention is that the more aggressive a diet is, the worse the effects are of that diet. So let's say I took an individual and put them on a modest calorie restriction of 250 calories per day. Their metabolism would slow, but it would be gradual over time, and their metabolism would only slow by a total of 250 calories because the calorie deficit is very small. Now, if I took another individual and I put them on a 1,500 calorie per day deficit, the body would have to drastically downregulate the metabolism to keep the body alive on that level of deficit. So the more aggressive the diet is, the more likely it's going to backfire in the long term. So anyway, this is the main thing that I wanted to start with, just kind of about the statistics, the effects of dieting, so on and so forth. Now I want to get into the system that your body actually has to prevent weight loss over time. So let's dive in. So this is the 3-pronged defense system that your body has to defend against weight loss, restore lost weight, and prevent future weight loss. Now, this particular model was popularized by Dr. Lee Norton, and if you don't know who that is, I would highly recommend giving him a follow on Instagram or checking out his YouTube channel. But anyway, I'm going to recap a little bit of this for the purposes of this video. So, when dieting, the body has 3 systems in place to make dieting harder, okay? The first one is the defense against weight loss. So, as I mentioned earlier, when dieting occurs, the body actually slows metabolic rate to try to compensate for the decreased energy intake, okay? So what happens is your body will actually start to operate better. So the things that currently burn X amount of calories will start to burn less calories over time, okay? So this will also cause a reduced overall caloric expenditure from your body. And this is actually what creates that weight loss plateau that most people are familiar with seeing over time. So over time, as the metabolism slows down and caloric expenditure is reduced, the body will start to lose less weight and eventually will stop losing weight altogether because the body will have adapted to the new caloric intake that this person is on. Now, the second thing that happens while the body is defending against this, weight loss is the body actually starts to upregulate hunger hormones. So there are two hormones responsible for your feelings of hunger and fullness in your body, okay? Now, the hormone that's responsible for hunger is called ghrelin, and the hormone that is responsible for satiety or fullness is called leptin. Over time, as we see diets progress, human beings will actually produce less leptin after a meal, so they'll be less satisfied after a meal, and will actually increase more ghrelin levels. So the body will actually upregulate the creation of ghrelin hormone to force the person to eat more, because again, the body perceives weight loss as famine, and the body's main job is to keep the lights on, keep the brain active, keep the person alive. So when it senses weight loss, it says, okay, I don't want this, this is a bad thing, we need to stop this from happening at all costs. So it will do everything it can to fight against weight loss in the first place. Second part of this three-pronged system is the restore system. So after the body defends against weight loss, it will actually try to restore previous body fat levels, okay? So here's what happens. As we diet and the metabolism is reduced, there is actually a higher likelihood of fat storage as food is added back into the diet. Now, here's what I mean by that. Let's say you have a person that diets and loses weight, and then what they try to do after they lose weight is they just go back to eating exactly the way that they were eating before. Well, now, they are no longer burning, if we use our example before, 2,000 calories a day. They're burning 1,750 calories per day. So what will happen is now they will actually be in a 250 calorie per day surplus. So what will happen is the body will start to gain body fat. As we lose weight, the adipocytes, or fat cells, actually become more insulin sensitive, so it becomes more likely that your body is going to put body fat back on, especially if food is added back into the diet very quickly. So if you have somebody that, your typical dieter that loses all this weight and then they say, oh man, I've hit my weight loss goal, I feel great, I'm gonna go out and treat myself and have all those foods that I have not been able to have for the past few months. That is one of the most dangerous things one can do in this situation because that actually increases the likelihood of fat storage. Now, along with the increased likelihood of fat storage, the body does exactly what I talked about before, is it increases its hunger levels, it increases the ghrelin hormone in the body, and it decreases satisfaction from each meal. So, over time, as we perpetually diet, every meal that we eat actually becomes less satisfying because as our fat cells shrink, they actually produce less leptin. So leptin is responsible for that feeling of fullness and satisfaction after a meal. So people that have been dieting for a long time or dieting over and over and over again will experience these, they'll have a meal that's relatively large and they'll still be ravenously hungry. And the reason for that is the body is actually producing less of that leptin hormone, making it less likely that the person feels satisfied after a meal. Along with that, it upregulates the creation of ghrelin, which makes it more likely that the person is going to consume more food. So the body is again fighting against this weight loss and trying to restore all of the body fat that this person just lost. Prong to this three-pronged system is the prevent system. So after the body defends against weight loss and then tries to restore previous weight, what it will do is it will actually prevent future weight loss. Now there are a few things that will happen here, okay? This first talking point that I'm going to get at has not yet been proven in human beings. It's actually only been proven in animal studies, but it is very possible that it does also occur in humans. When the fat cells shrink and food is ingested at high levels, in order to keep up with fat storage, in animal studies, they have seen that new fat cells will actually be created. Now, there is a theory called body fat set point theory, where every individual exists at a certain level of body fat, and that is the body fat that their body enjoys living at. Now, the problem with this particular body fat set point theory is if you increase the number of fat cells that an individual has, now, not only do the original fat cells need to reach this body fat set point, but also the new fat cells also have to reach this body fat set point, which will actually lead to a phenomenon called body fat overshooting, which is very, very common when diets are studied and dieting attempts are studied over the long term. The second thing is, with this prevent system, is a blunted metabolism. So there was a study done on contestants of The Biggest Loser. Now, if you're not familiar with the show The Biggest Loser, basically they take people that are several hundred pounds and they put them in a competition and see who can lose the most amount of weight over a very short period of time. Now, these participants are subjected to awful things. They can only eat 500 to 800 calories per day, very restrictive diets. They are put on insane lifting regimens 6-7 days per week, and you do see drastic transformations over a short period of time. However, when they followed these participants throughout life, not only did most of them regain significant amounts of weight, not all of their weight, but significant amounts of weight, but their metabolisms were also severely blunted 5 to 10 years in the future after this particular show or after this competition. So what they would actually do is they would take an estimation of what the metabolism of someone their weight, their age, their gender would be at, and they would compare it to their actual energy intake and what was happening with their body. And they were finding that some of these participants were 500, 700, even 1,000 calories below what they should have been at that given weight if they had a metabolism that was functioning normally for someone of their size. So this prevent system will make it harder for future weight loss attempts. So just to recap this whole system altogether, you have the defense part of this system, which will slow down the metabolic rate, reduce overall caloric expenditure, and increase hunger levels. You have the restore system, which makes it more likely that fat will be stored after a diet is over, increase hunger levels between meals and after meals, and also decrease the satisfaction that food provides. The third part of the system is the prevent system. So there is a possible increase in overall fat cell content when perpetual diets are followed over time. There is usually blunted metabolisms, and this will be more and more drastic depending upon how drastic the diet is. And we have the body fat set point theory, which again, the body wants to reach that old body fat that it was existing at. Again, this is just a theory, but this will also prevent future weight loss. And going into the set point theory a little bit further, let's say that someone ends up dieting and then they go through that period of body fat overshooting that is very common after a weight loss phase. Let's say that this person was 20% body fat when they started dieting, and they dieted down to 12% body fat, and then after their diet was over, they overshot back up to 25% body fat. If this person existed at a higher body fat percentage over time, it is thought that their body fat set point could actually increase to 25%. So assuming that they started with a body fat set point of 20%, after a few rounds of dieting, after a few rounds of body fat overshooting, if they existed at that new body fat level for a long period of time, that could actually become their new body fat set point. So now, when they diet in the future, instead of their body wanting to get back to 20% body fat, their body is going to want to get back to 25% body fat. So this system explains why dieting over and over and over and over again is not a good idea for long-term weight loss and long-term success. Before I bring this video to a close, I want to do a quick recap of what we talked about today. So the reason why perpetual dieting is bad is the body has several systems in place to not only prevent weight loss, defend against it, but also restore lost weight. So if one is dieting over and over and over and over again, it actually makes it less likely that they're going to achieve that lean physique that they are going after. Now, in today's video, I'm not going to cover exactly what you can do post-diet to prevent some of these things, but that will be covered in my next video, so make sure that you tune into it. The one piece of advice that I can leave all of you with is this. Losing weight is actually very, very common, and most people are very successful with it. I believe the statistics say that about 90% of people are successful at losing at least 5 to 10% of their body weight in their lifetime. However, the long-term statistics of weight loss are much bleaker than that. From a weight standpoint alone, only 5% of people are successful after 5 years of maintaining a 10% loss in body weight. So, if you are thinking about dieting or you are thinking about losing weight, my best piece of advice to you would be, don't think so much about how you are going to lose the weight, because if anything, that is the easier part of dieting. Think more about what you are going to do once the diet is over. If you are going to try and diet on a method of eating that's very vastly different from what you're doing day to day right now, I would highly recommend that you rethink that strategy and try to find an approach that allows you to not have to make a ton of changes to what you're currently doing. I would also recommend that you take that approach and take that process very slow and don't try to lose weight quickly. And I would recommend that if you get to a point where you feel like you're getting super hungry and getting super irritable and have been dieting for a long time, that you take a break from dieting and don't try to push your body to go farther than it wants to, because again, it is defending against this process and trying to keep you alive. So anyway, that is our video today. Hope you enjoyed it. If you are not already, be sure to subscribe to our channel and make sure to tune in next time when we talk about what you can do post-diet to prevent some of these things. Stay strong, everybody.